This is the Toyota Corolla. It's not fast, it's not luxurious, and nobody has ever called it exciting. But since 1966, over 50 million of them have been sold worldwide, more than any other car in history. And right now, roughly every 24 seconds, someone, somewhere in the world, buys a new one. So by the time you finish watching this video, around 24 Corollas will have found an owner. But to pull off numbers like that, Toyota didn't even need to build the best car. They didn't win on speed or luxury or technology. What they did was something completely different. But none of this was supposed to happen in the first place, because for most of its early history, Toyota wasn't even a car company. In the late 1920s, Toyota was a loom business. They made weaving machines. But the founder's son, Kiichiro Toyota, was obsessed with automobiles. So in 1929, he traveled to Detroit, the heart of the American car industry, and toured the factories of Ford and General Motors. What he saw amazed him. Ford was producing thousands of cars a day on a scale Japan couldn't imagine. But Kiichiro also noticed something else: massive waste. Enormous warehouses full of parts sat around for weeks, tying up money and space. The system was powerful, but it wasn't smart. Kiichiro knew Japan couldn't copy this model. They had less money, way less space, and a much smaller market. So back in Japan, he launched a motor vehicle division inside his father's loom company. Their first car, the Model AA sedan of 1936, was a cobbled-together machine, a Chevrolet engine stuffed into a body copied from Chrysler's DeSoto. Kiichiro just needed to prove that Japan could build a car at all. But passenger cars weren't selling in Japan, so he pivoted to trucks. And when the trucks kept breaking down, he didn't ignore the complaints. He personally helped fix customer vehicles and offered free repairs, building an early warranty system from scratch. It was scrappy, but it earned trust. Then World War II nearly destroyed everything. By 1950, Toyota was producing just 300 trucks a year. Workers were striking. Kiichiro himself was forced to resign as president. Toyota was dying. Then the Korean War broke out, and the US military urgently needed trucks. They placed an order with Toyota for 5,000 vehicles. That single contract was a lifeline. But the near-death experience left a scar. Toyota's leaders swore they would never be that vulnerable again. The old way of building cars, the bloated, wasteful American model Kiichiro had seen in Detroit 20 years earlier, would eventually kill them. They needed something completely different. The answer for this was Taiichi Ohno, an industrial engineer with a reputation for being demanding, difficult, and obsessively focused on one thing: eliminating waste. Taiichi looked at how American factories operated. Giant warehouses stacked with parts ordered months in advance. Entire departments just to manage the inventory of the inventory. Toyota couldn't afford any of it. But the solution didn't come from another factory. Taiichi noticed that supermarkets didn't keep huge backstock. Shelves were restocked only after customers took items. Nothing sat around wasting space or money. So he applied this logic to the factory floor. Each production step would only make what the next step needed, exactly when it was needed. No surplus. No mountains of parts collecting dust. He called it just-in-time production. But just-in-time created a terrifying risk. With almost no buffer stock, if one machine broke down or a single part arrived defective, the entire production line would grind to a halt within minutes. There was nowhere to hide a problem. So Taiichi turned that vulnerability into a weapon. He installed a cord above every workstation, the andon cord. Any worker, at any level, could pull it and stop the entire production line the moment they spotted a defect. At other factories, stopping the line meant you'd failed. At Toyota, it meant you were doing your job. Because the goal wasn't to keep things moving at all costs. It was to find the root cause of every problem and kill it so it never came back. Then came the third idea: Kaizen, continuous improvement. Every single employee, from engineers to the person tightening bolts on the assembly line, was encouraged to suggest small ways to make their work better. Reposition a tool bin to save 3 seconds of reaching. Angle a light so an inspector can spot a bad weld more easily. Individually, these changes were almost invisible, but multiplied across thousands of workers, thousands of stations, and decades of accumulated refinement, they produced savings no competitor could replicate overnight. In the 1970s alone, Toyota employees submitted over 1 million improvement suggestions in a single year. By the 1980s, that number crossed 20 million, and the vast majority were actually implemented. Now Toyota had the system. They just needed to prove it could work at mass scale with a car designed for millions. A car that had to be affordable, dependable, and good enough to win, because everything Toyota had built over the last 30 years was about to ride on a single model. In 1963, Toyota handed that job to Tatsuo Hasegawa, a former aircraft designer who had built planes during World War II before switching to cars. His brief was simple: design a car for the Japanese middle class. His philosophy was something he called 80+ points. Every aspect of the car had to score above 80 out of 100. No single feature could be neglected. Achieve balanced excellence everywhere, because a car that's brilliant in one area and weak in another won't survive years of daily use. But then Toyota learned that its rival, Nissan, was about to launch the Datsun 1000, a direct competitor targeting the same buyers. The Corolla's engine was designed to stay below the 1,000 cubic centimeter tax bracket. So at the last minute, Toyota bumped it to 1,100 cubic centimeters, a tiny change, just 100 extra cubic centimeters. But it signaled something important. This was a budget car that gave you more than you paid for. The Datsun arrived first. The Corolla outsold it from the start. The first Corolla hit the market in November 1966. Compact, simple, and surprisingly well-equipped. Bucket seats, a floor-mounted gear lever, and a roomy interior that reviewers compared to a living room sofa. In Japan, it was an instant sensation. Toyota built a brand new factory just for the Corolla. Within 2 years, their total annual output more than doubled. But Japan was a small market. To truly conquer the world, the Corolla needed America. It arrived on US shores in 1968 at $1,700, cheaper than the Volkswagen Beetle. But Americans weren't convinced. Japanese cars were seen as cheap, flimsy alternatives. The real market belonged to Detroit's massive V8 muscle cars. Overnight, the rules changed. The 1973 oil crisis sent gas prices through the roof, and suddenly, those beautiful American V8s that got 12 miles to the gallon became liabilities. Consumers who had prized style and horsepower now desperately needed fuel efficiency. American automakers scrambled to respond, rushing out small cars like the Chevy Vega and Ford Pinto, both infamous for their terrible quality. But Toyota didn't have to scramble. The Corolla was already there, small, efficient, and backed by a manufacturing system that had been eliminating defects for 2 decades. The timing was devastating for the competition and perfect for Toyota. Each satisfied Corolla owner told a friend. Each friend told another. By 1974, the Corolla was one of the best-selling cars worldwide. A year later, Toyota overtook Volkswagen as the #1 import brand in the United States. But here's what really separated Toyota from everyone else. Other companies could copy the car's size. They could match the price. What they couldn't copy was the system behind it. The Toyota production system meant that Toyota could produce millions of Corollas, and every single one would meet the same standard. A Corolla built on a Monday was identical to one built on a Friday. One assembled in Japan was the same quality as one from a factory in Kentucky or Turkey. And because of Kaizen, the car kept getting better without anyone noticing. Toyota adopted airbags, anti-lock brakes, eventually hybrid powertrains, but only after each technology was proven reliable. They never chased trends. Every improvement was tested until it was boring. And that was exactly the point. The result? A car engineered for the worst-case owner. The person who skips every other oil change, ignores the check engine light for months, parks outside through brutal winters, and still expects it to start every single morning. The Corolla conquered the world not by being the best car, but by being the most consistently adequate car ever made. And for millions of families across dozens of countries, adequate is exactly what they need. Over 50 million sold since 1966. Every 24 seconds, another one finds an owner. Not because it's exciting, because it starts every cold morning. Thanks for watching.